This about real estate prices, but
okay, so let's say that you don't. It depends on what you're doing. If you want to base your information that is sensitive and you know that it's going to get attacked by corporations or politicians, at least the material is going to stay up there. It is not going to be pulled out of historical records. We are not going to be able to guarantee, for example, let's say you're a blogger in Sri Lanka and you're under threat. We will not be able to, by this legislation, to protect that person's life. However, we'll be able to protect his story. This is not a perfect solution for all the problems we're facing when it comes to thwarting of information and expressions around our world, but it is a first step. And I think what is extremely important about this initiative is that there is now a dialogue about how the situation is, and it's not only localized, it's becoming globalized. And people are starting to meet up, and we intend to have a convention in Iceland next summer, in June or July, where we invite people, legal people and enthusiasts for making this happen. And I think it's in particular important to bring together people from around the world who are interested in reforming the legislation and creating a safe haven to some degree. There is no heaven, we know that. There is always a reflection of hell. So we're doing our best. I mean, we live in this world of duality, right? So we are doing our best to at least raise the awareness about the situation and create a dialogue among nations about this. And I encourage everybody that is interested in this, if they are concerned about or have ideas or legal expertise, to bring forward the ideas, because this is still in the making, even though we have are tasking the government with changing particular laws. If there are people out there that know of better laws or better ways, please come forward.
I wanted to ask John one question, which I think we should put on the table, about the university and Bay Citizen. I know that we, the journalism school, are in some way a partner. I think we sit on the board. And so how do you envisage that working, a daily news operation with the journalism school? Are students going to be your reporters, or what's
there's a number of components to the relationship with Berkeley, and some of them are pretty straightforward. We have a paid internship program. We have lots of applicants from the school. We expect that, some of the internships at least will go to students here, and that's, they've been involved in actually formulating what the program looks like. We had a kind of informal advisory group that was part of that. So that's one piece. We're gonna teach a class in the fall where we'll teach a project reporting class. It'll be kind of part of the newsroom. We expect to have a close relationship with the hyperlocal sites that Berkeley is currently publishing, the 3 Mission Local, Richmond, and North Oakland. So we certainly expect those to have significant relationships there, and use that hopefully a little bit as a template for some other initiatives in hyperlocal. There's also a idea to develop an R&D initiative, which will be part of not just the journalism school, but will involve the engineering school, information sciences, and the business school, to try to bring together some of those competencies around innovation in journalism, essentially. So there's a number of components to the partnership, and I think that it's going to evolve over time. I think there was a little misperception in the idea that somehow there was going to be an army of students out there all the time, doing the reporting for the Bay Citizen, which is not really the case. It's a much more kind of targeted project-by-project approach.
Questions? Sir.
Question for Chuck. We're all becoming familiar with nonprofit models, but you made a brief reference a while ago to the World Investigative reporting enterprise and how it's a hybrid and it's for profit. I think you called it 23C or something like that. Could you talk just a little bit about that structure?
It's a hard one for me to repeat. You talked about some new model that's a hybrid of 23C, blah, 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 and it does make money, but it won't make money. What are you talking about?
This is going to be a hell of a transcript. Is all I can. I know it's good. No, and there is this new type of corporation called an L3C that has been created just in the last few years. Only 6 states at the moment allow it, but it is a combination for-profit, so-called low-profit, social-minded. Low-profit types, and then philanthropy, and particularly program-related investments. A lot of foundations give basically loans in the form of 7-figure loans, and so it's a really unusual idea, and it's not been applied yet to journalism. Although Jim O'Shea at the Chicago News Cooperative, which also has a relationship with the New York Times for Chicago, has explored it. The question is it worth it if you can get regular foundation grants, why do you need to create this other L3C? And the other problem is what investors are interested in low profit. I mean, there are contradictions and issues that have to be resolved. Mira Pawa of the iLab here is in the back, and she has got a story that is on our site right this minute on L3C if you're interested at Investigative Reporting Workshop. It tells the origin of it, it says who invented it, and there is legislation that we believe may go through the Congress or is kicking around.
Yeah, I would just add on this point of kind of for-profit versus non-profit, and I don't know if this point has been made earlier, but one of the reasons that if you look at this panel entitled New Initiatives, and I don't think there are any for-profit initiatives up here. I don't know if there were any previously in the program. I don't think so. And one of the reasons that, or one of the big reasons, I'm very sorry, forgot to turn that off. Sorry. One of the big reasons that that a lot of these new initiatives are nonprofit is because there is no private investment capital that's interested in investing in these kinds of ventures. And I know that from hard experience at New West. I raised private capital for New West. It was very difficult. It's very difficult as a business. And if you look around there now, and if you talk to VCs or anybody in the money business, my sort of rule of thumb is that there's basically no investors for a venture in which the primary use of proceeds is to pay journalists. So there are a lot of investors in various kinds of media things and all kinds of aggregation plays and all kinds of technology-based stuff, and so it's not like there's no private investment capital in the media business, but there is no private investment capital for ventures where the purpose of the money is to pay the journalists. It is not seen as a viable business model in the investment community, and that is just a fact, and I think there is almost no exception to that rule. I mean, there's a couple of initiatives like the All Britain Initiative in Washington. There's the Global Post. There are a couple of examples of new things that are for profit, but those each have very particular characteristics relating to a particular person who has reasons for doing it that are other than, I'm going to make a 10 times return on this. So I think that kind of context of where the private business world is at on the whole question of journalism, I think is an important factor in why a lot of these new ventures are structured the way they are.
I was going to agree that there are these ones you just mentioned, Global Post, and Jim Brady, highly regarded former Washington Post head of the WashingtonPost.com with All Britain, is coming out any day, pretty much. He has a 5-year business plan, and they expect to be profitable in the 3rd year. I don't know if that'll happen, but there's another one that has not gotten as much publicity, well-known and respected investigative reporter John Solomon, twice approached to be head of the enterprise unit at the New York Times, who has a lot of different things in his background. Former AP deputy bureau chief, is starting a for-profit company in Washington to do investigative things. I don't know exactly what his model is, but what is interesting is that there is some activity. I mean, you're absolutely right. I don't think the venture capital people are crawling out of the woodwork to support investigative reporting. I'm not suggesting that, but it is absolutely right to say there's something. I'm noticing some activity now this spring that I didn't see a year or two ago. So I'm kind of fascinated by that.
Yeah, this L3C sounds extremely interesting, and I don't know any details about it, but I'll tell you why it sounds interesting to me, is that we have routinely been approached by people in the United States, billionaires, who are willing to give money if it's bought as shares, but they actually don't want any return on the shares or control. Rather, it's a fascinating thing that if you're trying to run a non-profit, the cards are stacked against you here in the United States in terms of the amount of regulation that you have to deal with, regulation of the banking system, regulation even stemming into things like PayPal, and whereas the for-profit sector has been much more politically influential and has been able to make the regulation lighter that covers its operations. So it's actually, the bureaucracy is onerous on non-profits here, but it's much slighter on for-profits. And the giving shares, as an example, if your primary occupation is investor, then giving shares is part of your business investment, so you don't pay income tax on this when you give shares. Sorry, not when you give shares, when you buy shares in an organization. So I think this is quite interesting, these hybrid models. Also, what is the natural affinity between certain groups? If you have two for-profit companies limited by share, let's say example WikiLeaks in the United States was limited by share, and then maybe we have ProPublica or the EFF, some allied institutions that were also limited by share. The natural way of expressing that alliance, if we were for-profit, is we do a share swap to some degree to express our mutual interest in the long term. Now, the only other way of doing it is, in the current structures, is you sort of swap board members, which is much more difficult, harder to quantify, less precise, and there's personalities involved, etc. But if you had some sort of low profit limited by share, then this natural mutual interest could be expressed in share swaps. And that's why for-profit networks, for-profit companies are able to develop these incredible tendrils with each other, an incredible intermeshed network of mutual interest and profit flow. And that's something, the lack of that is really debilitating the non-profit sector in this country.
And with that, I'd like to thank the panelists.